Welcome to Slovenia, a land of waterfalls, mountains and a myriad of churches.
I'll never forget the moment that I realised that I gravitated towards Slovenia whenever things were a little bit interesting in my life. This stunning small country just seems to fit with me. It puts me back together again. And I'm going to be honest, if the language wasn't so flipping difficult, I might consider relocating. But for now, I shall satisfy myself with yet another short break. Of course I'll share it with you. Of course. There's one place in particular that's captivated me, and I've been back 3 times, twice in autumn when the mists are swirling, and this time in spring. I did not know what to expect. This special place is shown on the map as Cerkev Sveti Tomaž, Cerkev being church, Sveti meaning saint. Although it's not geographically that far from the airport, please remember there's a lot of mountains. This footage was taken from very close to the church, and the normal place that photographers stand is here. Now, because of those swirling mists, October is rather popular, with photographic courses and tourists alike. During my first visit in 2022, I struck lucky. Not that I knew it, until I returned the following year staying here, and well, out of 3 mornings I got 1 with optimal conditions, but oh boy will that stay with me forever.
These shots, I never used to believe it, but it's here.
Chatting away to a few other togs, it was clear that the awesome experience was as powerful for them as it was for me.
Quite liking that lump of trees on the left-hand side. It's sort of being shrouded by mist. Look how fast that mist is moving.
Okay, I didn't get any colour in the sky, but I did get this.
God, it's just a matter of waiting until you get the right combo.
I captured a few shots. The shutter speed's a bit too long, I lost definition, but eventually I worked out a composition that was going to work. What I really loved about this location was the interplay of the fog around the church. Eradicate the clutter, lady. And you know what? This even worked in black and white. Boom! When the mist got too much, minimalism worked a treat. Every glorious misty scene must come to an end though. The sun comes up and makes it too contrasty. So now to 2025, and a day when they said 2% fog. Well, they lied.
You know, I was worried about mists.
Lack of them.
Yeah.
Or so I thought.
Needn't have.
Let me explain. This being May, I was expecting spring flowers, maybe a touch of something in the valleys, but not this.
A few years ago, I was in Madeira. There's a famous place there called Fernal Forest, which everyone wants to shoot in the mist / fog. And I've got this here on day 1. I had to go there about 6 times. And just these trees here. And there's one in particular just behind me here, which is looking exquisite, particularly when you photograph it at a wonk. Well, you're not on a wonk. It's growing at a wonk.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Sort of like that. And what I'll have to do in post, I think, is just to brighten up the whites, because they're looking quite grey at the moment.
It's not often I'll start showing you something in black and white, but it just seemed to work a little better than the colour version, which seemed to lack something.
If you've had a successful shot when you've been at a location beforehand, quite often you'll be tempted to try and recreate that. I'm not going to lie, I am up on the ridge one morning, but if it's like this, not a hope in heck. Now, your challenge is to try and find something different when you go to a location. Quite often there's going to be conditions that are different, the lighting that's different, but I couldn't get more different than this. But I'm still managing to get some interesting shots.
Subjective.
Well, I think they're interesting. On a ridge over there will probably be a selection of photographers, possibly a whole line of them, rather disappointed at this pea soup. I'm not. It's quite cool. Although if I'm up there in 2 days' time, I'll be very upset. Very. Interestingly, I think the beauty of having returned to this location and being forced not to be able to take photos from my classic spot has forced me to think differently. And I think that might be a bit of a blessing, because I do tend to get stuck in a bit of a rut and try and think, oh, I'll better that shot, I'll make it a little bit better. And I go home with an SD card full of shots that are remarkably similar to what I've done before. And there's not vast amounts of point in that.
And even on this trip, I did exactly the same. Lots of repeat shots, but this shot, this one here, that's the one I wish I'd taken. Idiot. So we went back, went to bed for an hour, and woke up to this, right next to that beautiful church. Just in case anyone's interested, the details of this place is in the description. It's such a lovely place to be based. Wow. The next day or so we spent going around Slovenia, exploring little churches, villages, mountain passes, just lovely. And the verges, they were crammed with flowers, and it was exactly the right time for the locals to gather it in for the hay. This little beauty, in the middle of nowhere, is also called Sveti Tomaž. This immaculate church is a new one to me, and I spent a merry hour just watching as the sun drifted in and out of the scene to capture this shot. Note the church in the background too. A ridiculously early start saw us driving through the mountains to get to this for about an hour before dawn. Thanks to an app that a friend of mine photographed, I knew exactly when the sun was coming up. This app looks really useful for a number of locations. The problem is you do need to be in situ to really get the best out of it. The night before we flew home, I met up with a chum who took me to a hill with goats and so many churches. He gave me one of my first ever lessons about 10 years ago. And yes, we talked geek.
On that first lesson you gave me, you said if you don't have any other filters, you make sure you have a polarizer.
As you can tell, he was truly fascinated. I'm sharing these shots from when the sun was going down at after sunset, but I really want to take you back to one of the most memorable mornings I've had for a long while. And it wasn't until way after the sun came up that it all happened.
I am back at Sveti Tomaž, one of my favourite locations, which I normally visit in October when the mists are really swirling around the church. They're not today, however, every now and then we do get a peek. What I have got is the sun about to peek up over the mountains just there. So I'm going to do a cheeky sun star, because why not? I'm also further down the road, so I've got some trees in the front, which should work quite well this time of year. They may get backlit at some particular point. I don't know. But I've also got a cuckoo on top of one of those trees, and that's quite charming. Right, I've got to go because my sun star is awaiting me.
I originally took a few sets of 5 exposures, thinking I'd have to blend in post. However, in the end, my middle one sufficed.
And just like that, it happens literally 3 or 4 seconds after I stopped talking to you last time. And then your scene is completely overwhelmed because it's backlit. All that for about 20 seconds. I've got so many nice photos from here that I thought it was an opportunity to experiment. I'm not going to beat that last one.
The one with all the mist.
But it's so nice to be here with only 2 other photographers as opposed to great swathes and lines of them. That can make things really quite unpleasant, quite frankly. Right, long lens on, picking out other scenes now. Here we go.
I'm going to be honest, I think it was more gorgeous in the scene than it is on this photo, but you get the drift.
Trying to pick out some different scenes right now, and I'm exposure bracketing the living daylights out of everything. I've got no idea if everything's going to come out nicely, but this is so good.
Wait for it.
Very, very different this time of year though. Very different light-wise.
At this point, I had no idea of the effect that the sun was having as it warmed the wet grass.
The reason I wanted to come back to this location, which is by now very familiar to me, is because I've never done it at this time of year. And I've seen some photos, not of this location, but of different times of year in other locations around. And I thought, I wonder how that would translate into Sveti Tomaž. What's striking about this is the lines going into the distance with the different levels of mountains and the light, which is admittedly silhouetting the church, but it makes for quite a dramatic shot.
Well, I've sort of got some backlighting here, although my cuckoo has disappeared.
So just as one of the two other photographers left, this beautiful misty scene happened with the sunbeams catching it. You can't see it now, so let me just jump on and capture a few shots to show you. Oh, need to massively underexpose.
And indeed I did. 2 stops underexposed it happened. I'm really quite pleased with this. The sunbeams on the right hand side, I've never captured them before, and they really add to the composition. It was also one of those very rare shots which required minimal processing.
Well, I confess I will be mighty sorry to leave this place today. It always feels a little bit like coming home, which is ridiculous, because it ain't nothing like Worthing.
So as ever, my 3 favourites. This one was a toughie. I'd love to know if any of these or any others have caught your eye. Let me know in the comments.
Sveti Tomaž and the churches of Slovenia, you have been a blast. Thank you for joining me on my church fest. It has just... It's so nice to be able to share some of these things with you. That's all. Take care. Have a cracking couple of weeks. I'll see you soon.
In a couple of weeks, when I've finally got over editing all these photos and done those, I'm going to show you some impossible blues. See you there.